You know, it's a bit of a big year for me. This is the first full year I've had my channel. It was the year I truly fell in love for the first time, and it was the year that I came out as non-binary on YouTube as well. It's also been a really good year for gaming. You may find this hard to believe, but I fucking love video games. Have done since the first time I watched my cousin playing Mario at my grandma's house, and they've been a near constant fixture in my life since, I don't know, I was like 8 years old. I honestly don't remember, it's been a really long time. And since we're wrapping up the year and I could use a fun and simple project to blow off some stress, I figured I'd go over the best games that I played in 2024 and pretend that gushing about them counts as doing anything remotely productive. Sound good? No? Ah, that's okay, I wasn't really asking. Before I start though, allow me to set the rules for this video and for future videos like this. First, I'll only be going over the games that I either played or finished for the first time this year, and by finished I mean got to story end. Also, I'm not even going to pretend that this list is objective in any way. This is just going to be the games that made the biggest impact on me, not on the gaming landscape overall. Second, you're going to notice a lot of games in this list that have been out for a while, and you'll probably be wondering how I've only just gotten to them this year, and the answer is simple. This was also my first year with an actual PC that can handle games. It's not much, but my roommates helped me build it, and I love it to pieces. I've spent most of my life moving from one laptop of varying quality to another, so PC gaming is a relatively new experience for me. I've been a console scrub for a long time, please don't hold that against me. Finally, if I don't mention a big game that came out this year, it's probably because I couldn't afford it. I am perpetually strapped for cash on account of being actually very poor, so while there are a lot of games that I would have loved to play this year, I just literally could not afford to. Hopefully next year I can catch up on some of the bigger releases. But this is why, on this list at least, you won't see Veilguard or Armored Core or Dragon's Dogma or whatever AAA game you really loved. If you'd like to help me afford more games, I have a link to my Patreon in the description. Otherwise, with all that out of the way, here are the 10 best games I played this year, plus some honourable mentions because I have too many things I want to talk about and no self-control. Alright, let's go. Little Gator Game is a game about a little gator, shocking, I know, who used to play this really fun pretend adventure game with her big sister that's totally not The Legend of Zelda, and also really wants to again. But she's a college student now, and despite being home for break, she's too busy with a group project to play with them. But academic obligation is no excuse to not have fun, so Lil Gator convinces their friends to help them set the game up on this little island where they used to play, with the logic that if she sees how much fun she's missing out on, then she'll obviously put down her laptop and play with them again. And let's be clear, only Lil Gator thinks this will work. Their friends help, but they really think Lil Gator should just tell their sister how they feel, especially when the plan of using FOMO shockingly doesn't work. Lil Gator's solution to this is that they just need to make the game bigger. So you spend the rest of the game making friends and setting up the biggest game of pretend anyone's ever seen outside of actual LARPing, and it's fucking amazing. I used the word game too many times in that paragraph, I swear to God. This game just oozes charm, and it takes some very obvious inspiration from Breath of the Wild, what with your ability to sled on a shield and hang glide and a stamina wheel for climbing, but it's all with cardboard and confetti, and the entire thing is adorable as all fuck. I honestly just love the vibe of the game, from the way the gator toddles around, to the fact that you can switch out your wooden sword with a stick or a princess wand, to the fact that your entire goal is just to make friends and have fun so that you can get your big sister to play with you again. What's hilarious is that nobody else actually believes this will work, and they're all just humouring their friend, but they also all end up having so much fun that it really doesn't matter. And Little Gator is operating on a level of assuredness only available to those who are so deep in denial that they're actively treading water. But this whole thing really does just work out really well. If you asked me to tell you the main themes of this game, they would be that playing pretend is rad, and also talk about your feelings, you dumb fuck. I mean, not in those exact words, but you get my drift. There's honestly not much more to the game than that. It's just cute and fun, and I love those things. It's also one of the only games I've ever actually 100%ed, along with one other game on this list. I find completionism to be a chore, but this game actually makes it a part of the story, and it gives you the tools to make it easier. It also just makes sense in context, because to complete the game, you have to clean up everything so you can go home, which is such wonderful story gameplay synchronicity. Like I said, there's not much to it, but the whole thing is so cute and sincere that I can't help but love it. If the winter months tend to get you down, this game is absolutely what you need to help boost your mood. It's not very deep or challenging, but I cannot recommend it enough for anyone who just wants to chill and enjoy the simple things in life. Also, the soundtrack is really nice, very cozy. You know, this seems like a good time to remind people that, despite appearances, I am not a furry. At least, I don't think I am. I've got a few friends who are, and they've been sitting in our mutual Discord wearing dark cloaks and standing in a circle around a freshly slaughtered goat while chanting, one of us, for the last couple weeks. So I'll keep you updated if I suddenly feel some dark urges take over and I develop the need to spend all the money I don't have in a dog suit or something. Okay, in all seriousness, while it is fun and easy and morally correct and also fun to laugh at furries, I do hold a certain degree of respect for them, just as I would for any community that's primarily built around self-love and artistic expression. And they've got a lot of really talented artists of all kinds in their community as well, which is something I hold in the highest of regard. Also, furries rule both the IT industry and the internet as a whole, so please don't hurt me. I've been getting into visual novels and dating sims a lot lately, and somewhat unfortunately, most that contain what I actually want to see, that is, gay characters and a story deeper than the shallow end of an empty pool, are made by furries, but that's honestly fine. I care about story first and aesthetics second, so unless the visuals are eye-bleedingly ugly, I can deal with an anthro cast so long as the writing is solid. Komorebi is actually a game that I found pretty early this year when I was scrolling through Steam's LGBT section, and it's a game I picked up based on the story summary alone. The premise is that, one day, everyone in the world suddenly received a glimpse of their future, an image of themselves at an upcoming point in their lives that they knew, beyond a shadow of a doubt, was true. And that vision would never go away, they'd see it again every single day. Always the same, unchanged no matter what. And as new generations began to also receive their visions at the age of 13, the world had to accept that they were here to stay. So in this game, you live in a world where everyone has some kind of predestined event that they actively know is coming. The kicker? You're one of the very few people in the world who never got a vision. You're a member of a minority with an absolutely free future. What I really like about the game is how well realised the world feels. The writers put a lot of thought into what the world would look like if that suddenly happened. An organisation named Argus would begin working with the governments of the world to establish order and help people deal with their visions, and they quickly became more powerful than most countries. People who saw themselves committing a crime or as victims could be brought into a form of witness protection, and Argus created the system, a sort of automated points-based algorithm that would score how good of a citizen someone was and quote-unquote objectively evaluate their value in society, and that became the ruling force in people's lives. The story even brings up the Stolen Renaissance, a term for the end result of people who saw themselves creating amazing works of art and attempting to do so right away, but lacking the skill at the time, they ended up ruining it and depriving the world of the actual masterpiece they could have created. What the fuck, that's an amazing concept. You never see stories about seeing the future even come close to something that fucking interesting. And all of this is found in a fucking furry dating sim. We non-furries really need to start working harder, we're being left behind. And speaking of, yes, this is a gay dating sim. You play as, well, I guess yourself, but you go by the name Delta, an aforementioned non-vision haver who moves across the country to live with their online friend Isaac and his roommate. There are 5 different characters you can date, and you can even date all 5 at once if you want, and the friend group is pretty chill about it. The game is broken down into scenes and hangouts, and while you can do them in any order, you do have to view all of them to continue to the next major story beat. The story is competently told, and the characters are all well written and fleshed out, with distinct personalities and defined chemistry, and the game is also fully voice acted. It's pretty good overall. I do have a couple of points of criticism though. The first of which is, I feel like the game relies too heavily on canine designs. Taylor the rabbit is the only one whose design really sticks out, due to him being the only member of the main cast who's not a dog or wolf of some kind. Actually, I think he's the only one in the entire cast. Would it really have been that hard to add a little bit more variety? They're all visually distinct from each other, and they're all well designed, but even the side characters are canines, and it honestly kind of gets a little bit boring from a world building perspective for me. My second point of criticism is that For how well realised the world and characters are, the story itself is actually pretty predictable. It's well told, true, but I was able to accurately guess most of the twists without much trouble. Also, the ending is kind of meh. Do keep in mind though that I'm a writer and I find it easier than most to predict narratives, and I also care more about them than the average person, so you might not have the same issues I did. And considering I played this game specifically for the story, the fact that I ended up liking it and the characters so much should tell you a lot. I can definitely recommend this game if you think the premise sounds interesting because it absolutely delivers. Also, Isaac is best boy? No, I'm not taking questions at this time. Man, I'll bet some YouTube commenters are feeling very vindicated right now. Ikenfell, I know it's pronounced Ikenfell, but I also don't care, was actually recommended to me by multiple people on 2 different videos I made this year, specifically on my non-binary and asexual representation videos, and I looked into it and liked it, and so here we are. Special thanks to the people who recommended it, by the way, you know who you are. Ikenfell is the story of Marit, a girl whose sister, a witch at the titular Hogwarts knockoff, has cut all contact, and so she's arrived at the school to find out what the fuck happened. Marit is just an ordinary, non-magical girl though, so the ghosts guarding the school try to scare her off before she suddenly develops the ability to shoot fire from her hands, and they decide to let her in anyway because, hey, she has magic now. What follows is a fun and actually really quite emotional story about change, self-acceptance, and friendship. Also trauma. Lots and lots of trauma. The funny thing is, I was originally going to just place this in the honorable mentions because it has a reference to the #1 game on the list, but then I went back to replay it this month to get footage for the video, and I couldn't put it back down because not only is it fun, but I suddenly had some extra context that made me love it even more. That Hogwarts comparison wasn't just a joke. I grew up on the Harry Potter books, but I've since distanced myself from them thanks to growing up and realising that they were written by a complete shithead, and that her garbage worldview is baked into the very essence of the stories she writes. And I've kind of missed them lately. They were a big part of my childhood, and I can even credit my early love for them as kind of the reason I love writing today. But J.K. Rowling spent the whole of the year making a disgustingly admirable play for the title of Worst Fucking Person Alive British Edition. What with the racism, the transphobia, and the Holocaust denial. And so when I started replaying this game, everything just fucking clicked for me. Hey Harry Potter fans. Aren't you tired of defending the books of a woman whose entire life since publishing them has been one long string of self-sabotaging hate speeches? Well, why don't you try getting into Ikenfell then? You could summarize this game as, what if Harry Potter wasn't written by a garbage writer with garbage opinions? Of course, that still wouldn't do it justice, because you'd have to follow it up with other questions to start getting an idea of how much better it is. Questions like, what if the lore wasn't pulled directly out of the writer's ass in an attempt to sound smart? What if Ron wasn't a narcissistic shithead who constantly abused his friends, and was also a cute asexual alchemist enby? What if Malfoy had actual redeeming qualities, and was also gay? What if the story didn't try to fucking justify slavery? What if the potions professor wasn't mean to kids, and was generally more pleasant than a broken glass suppository? What if Dumbledore was actually gay and was also a traumatized lesbian with a supportive gardening girlfriend? And it's all presented in a delightfully crunchy pixel art style. There's really a lot of gay in this game, which, let's be honest, already makes it the better version of Harry Potter. God, there are so many reasons to enjoy this instead of the horrid transphobic bitches books. People should really get on that. From a gameplay perspective, this is a turn-based RPG that functions on an isometric grid. You move your units to their spots and choose their spells, with each one having a different zone of influence that you have to keep in mind. You'll also very likely find a 3-man setup that works the best for your playstyle, because each of the characters has their own unique magic and niche to fill, and none of them ever feel redundant. With things like Marit's higher base damage and control options, Petronella's ability to both heal their allies and poison enemies, and Rook's ability to steal items and exclude allies from his AoEs, doing a good job of setting them apart. The combat takes some influence from the Paper Mario games too, so timing your button presses correctly will allow you to heal or deal more damage, as well as take less damage and avoid status effects from enemy attacks. Depending on how good your timing is, you'll either get a miss, an okay, or a great result, and each of the characters' different spells has a different timing to keep track of, so it's best to familiarise yourself with each one. I'm not joking, by the way, this game is a lot less forgiving than the Paper Mario series, and there's a stark difference between an okay and a great. There are fights in this game that will kick your ass up and down the garden path if you, like me, tend to struggle with proper timing, so you'd best get familiar with those attacks fast. And of course, the game isn't beyond criticism. The story comes to mind, honestly. It kind of meanders and it waits until 9 hours into the game to reveal a hugely plot relevant detail, so your enjoyment of the game will largely depend on how much you like the characters. And I do like them, quite a lot actually. Also, this is probably the first time I've ever seen a story say, hey, from the outside, the main character can kind of come off as a selfish dick, can't they? And make no mistake, Safina, Marit's sister, and the stand-in for Harry, is absolutely guilty of that. Also, this game has a really good soundtrack. You'll probably notice that I tend to enjoy games with really good OSTs, and this is absolutely one of them. I can definitely recommend at least checking that out if the game itself doesn't seem like your thing. Oh yeah, and you save the game by petting cats. It's not relevant to anything, I just think it's delightful. Like I said earlier, I've been getting into visual novels a lot lately, and I had to put this game on the list. It'd be a crime not to. Slay the Princess is a game wherein you play the hero, given the titular task by a very lovely and trustworthy narrator who only wants what's best for you. You want me to slay the princess, sir? Well, this should be no problem. Let me just take a look at the Steam tags here. Oh, choices matter and psychological horror, you say? My, we are in for a treat. In all seriousness, this is a phenomenal game. While the visual presentation can at first make it look like a sort of low-budget affair, it belies how truly spectacular the art direction really is, and the pencil and paper art style only grows more and more impressive as the game continues and both the environment and the princess begin to reshape or deform. Paired with the OST, which tends to favour more understated sounds, I struggle to think of a game that can change its presentation so wildly, but still feel so consistent. Also, the voice acting is fucking top notch. It only has 2 VAs, Nicole Goodnight as the princess and Jonathan Sims as literally everyone else, but they do such a good job, it's honestly kind of incredible. The more you play the game, the more voices begin to join the narrator, depending on which choices you've made, and Jonathan manages to make each of them feel distinct. It's the writing that shines above all else though. The story is really well told, and there are so many deviations and possible choices that you can take and a proper response for everything, and it's just so good. This is a game with an incredible amount of replay value, largely because it has so many different endings that take each of your choices into account, though perhaps too many different endings. I haven't seen them all yet, and this is mostly because while the game tracks which choices you make in a single playthrough so that you can avoid repeating, it doesn't do so for a second or third. This is a game that really needs a feature that lets you see which choices you've already taken in previous runs, because otherwise you can be left floundering while trying to find exactly what you need, and I just got tired of it. The funny thing is, despite the huge variety of endings and choices and all that, you actually can just choose to stab the bitch and walk out the door, stubbornly refusing to acknowledge the possibility that things won't work out. And if you do that, you get this hilarious end screen that's basically just saying, "Well done, you big strong boy, you did it, you killed the princess, here's a sticker. Let us know when you're ready to play the real game with the adults." Okay, champ. And I honestly respect the game for it. This doesn't even count as one of the real endings, it's just super fucking funny. I've mentioned the many different choices you can make a couple times now, and it's not just because it's an integral feature of the game. Choice is actually the main theme, both the choices we make and the choices we're denied, and I honestly find it fascinating just how well the game explores that through the narrative and gameplay. The princess herself changes depending on which choices you make, becoming a reflection of how you decide to approach her. If you approach without the knife, she's friendlier and more willing to talk to you, but if you do have the knife, even before she can see you, she's immediately hostile and cold. The thing is though, no matter her attitude when you first approach her, the underlying sense of wrongness is always there, and she can be genuinely unnerving, even before she starts threatening your life or chewing through her own arm. And once you do make a choice as to how to handle her, well, I'll leave that for you to discover. Like I said, there are a lot of endings in this game, but most aren't the ending, just an ending that leads into another go around. And while I won't spoil where the story ends up going with this, I'm sure some people are wondering what my favourite route is, so I'll wrap this up by telling you all about that. To be clear, this isn't my favourite route per se, because I don't think favourite is a word I can really apply to any of them, but it's the one that left me with the most to think about, and that would be the damsel route. In the damsel, or the happy ending route, The princess becomes an anime-eyed waifu whose only concern is making you happy, to the point that she starts breaking down as you interrogate her on her own wants and desires, and it's genuinely off-putting to me. But then one of the voices, the voice of the smitten, takes control of your body and makes you kill yourself by ripping your own ribcage open to show her your heart. And then you're back at the start, but the cabin is this luxurious castle, and you go upstairs and find the princess at the head of a long table with a monstrous shadow writhing behind her, and you're forced to play out this horrifying facsimile of domestic bliss, eating dinner and playing games and spending time together. But the lie cannot hold up forever. The princess isn't happy, no matter how hard she tries to be for your sake, and it's only a matter of time before the illusion breaks. This route, more than anything else, demonstrates just how absolutely tragic of a figure the princess is. She's completely dangerous, yes, and oftentimes terrifying, but she's also someone who's had her ability to choose entirely taken away. Who she'll be, what she'll do, where she goes. She's able to control absolutely none of this. She's a prisoner in the truest sense of the word. All she can do is wait and react, serving as little more than a reflection of the player until the very end. The princess is someone who has been robbed of their capacity for self-determination, and in the whole of this psychological horror game, that is the thing I find more horrifying than anything else. More than any other game on this list, this is one I think you should absolutely play for yourself rather than watch a playthrough of. Yeah, I'm sure this comes as a surprise to absolutely no one, considering the last video I put out. What can I say? I really like Baldur's Gate 3. I like the characters, I like the story, I like getting to play D&D without having to wait on my DM's schedule. I like it so much that they've been slowly making a series of videos analysing the companions. It's been a lot of fun. It's also been my first Baldur's Gate game, so while I know that there's been some arguments between older and newer fans of the series, I can't really weigh in on that because I don't have any experience with the older games. I do have a couple criticisms of the game though. For one, I wish they'd actually put more non-binary characters into it, because outside of the player character, the only NPCs in the game are a literal soulless monster and a demon shapeshifter, which was definitely a choice. I also feel like the character creator missed out by having the bodies be a binary choice and not given more options to choose from, though I do like that sex and gender are two different options. I recognise that these aren't exactly universal complaints, but as an NB, these are things that I tend to notice more. It really feels like it should have been easy to sprinkle non-binary characters throughout the game, or to just make one of the many companions in NB so that if you're playing a non-binary character, you don't feel like you're the only one in the world. What's less contentious is that the story suffers a bit from cramming two chosen and the battle with the Absolute into Act 3, which gives the final stretch of the story a real meandering feel to it. Act 2 is definitely the strongest of the game, largely because it's more focused, and I feel like Act 3 is a step downward in that regard. Finally, Tav feels completely superfluous to the story. I played a Tav on my first run through, and the Dark Urge on my second and third, and it really does feel like the Urge was the story that Larian actually wanted to tell, but they were afraid people wouldn't like the game if they couldn't make their own character, so they just threw in the option. And this makes Tav playthroughs suffer from a lack of personal stakes. You could argue that the appeal of a Tav playthrough, aside from the self-insert aspect, which if you like that, I'm not judging you, is that you get to see a random nobody become the hero of the realm. But the problem is that Tav just doesn't feel significant no matter what you achieve. They're always just kind of there, and their only defining trait is that they're Baldurian. I don't know, I much prefer Dirge playthroughs. You can tell that's where the actual work was put in. I am planning a video on the Dark Urge this year, so I will expand on my feelings there when I get to it. I know fans of this game might be a little miffed over the fact that I only ranked it 6th and also just spent the entirety of its section criticizing it, but considering how much I've shown I like this game in my other videos, this says less about BG3 and more about how much I really love the other games coming after it. Not much else to say really, I've got other videos coming up soon that'll say more than this one ever could. Except that Karlach is best girl, and if you disagree, that's fine. Pistols at dawn, I won't need a backup. Alright, moving on. I feel like it's the inclusion of this game that will really hammer home for people just how recently I started PC gaming. This is another game that I played only just recently, right at the beginning of this month in fact. I got it at the end of the Black Friday Steam sale. Despite the fact that I've literally only ever heard good things about the game, I wasn't actually going to play it until one of my friends told me this was his favourite game and that he really wanted to hear my thoughts on it. And I'm so glad I listened to him, this game is really good. Night in the Woods, well, you probably don't need a summary of it. It's one of those games. It's one of those games that comes out of nowhere and utterly blows people's minds with just how different and good it is. Undertale, In Stars and Time, Night in the Woods, these are all games that leave a significant impact on people, if not on the gaming landscape itself, and it certainly left an impact on me. Night in the Woods has an air of what I can only describe as sublime melancholy. A feeling that only grows as it becomes increasingly clear how not okay May really is, and just how badly she wants to hide away from what she's been through and is still very much going through. I actually relate to May quite a bit. I've never suffered through a violent dissociative episode before, but I'm very familiar with the toll that mental illness takes on you, and the desire to crawl back into something familiar and safe and just lie there crying until it feels like the world is a less hostile place, or until you can finally muster up the energy to drag yourself out from under the covers and take care of just one thing on the list of 20 that you need to get done, whichever comes first. And I'm also familiar with feeling like things should be different. That I should be different, that I should be living up to people's expectations of me, and even if I don't know how or if I can. But it's also a game about finding fleeting solace in the little things, in time with friends and in donuts and pizza and making shapes out of the stars. It's a game about finding hope and meaning where it feels like the world just doesn't want you to have any. But it's also about battling a nihilistic nostalgia for the past with a belief in a better future and a grounding in the people around you in the present. And these are ideas that strike a powerful chord with me. The music really helps with this. The soundtrack was developed by A Shell in the Pit, who've always been masters of bringing across a feeling of place with their music. I've been listening to each game's soundtrack as I write this essay, and this is one of the ones I was most looking forward to. Night in the Woods is a powerfully resonant game, and I'm glad I played it, even if it did make me cry 2 or 3 times at 4 in the morning. Yes, I played the fucking game! I swear I got more ESOT fans commenting on my non-binary character design video than actual NBs. Then again, there may be some significant overlap there, but yes, I played the game, and you know what? It's quite good. In Stars and Time takes place at the end of the grand world-saving quest just before the final boss, and it starts with a hero party getting ready on the night before the final dungeon. And I was admittedly a little skeptical about starting at this level of in medias res, but the writing is so good that it doesn't matter. You really do get the impression that these people have been adventuring for a long time, and that their friendship is both absolutely genuine and the source of their strength. The world as a whole is also incredibly well realised, with details both big and small, giving the very real impression that this is a place people live, with different cultures and customs and norms that come from those differences. It's a world that, if it weren't in the middle of being fucked by the world's shittiest crybaby, I would absolutely love to visit and explore. See, the country is being slowly frozen in time by some bastard calling himself the king, and it's your job to go in and beat his whiny ass into oblivion so people can actually live their lives, which I imagine is exactly how it would have gone if Siffrin, the party rogue and your POV character, hadn't missed a trap and gotten crushed to death by a rock the size of a mobile home. It's okay though, because he immediately discovers that he can loop back in time upon death and do it all over again. And with a newfound, aid isn't the right word. No, there's guidance. Prodding? Does that work? Yeah, that works. With the allegedly helpful prodding of some weird star-headed person named Loop, they immediately go forth with a renewed gusto to make sure they actually make it to the king and save the day. Except, spoiler warning, they're going to be looping a lot, and Siffrin is the only party member who remembers the events of the past loops, leaving them uniquely isolated even when surrounded by friends. The writing in this game is some of the best I've ever seen, because unlike most time loop games, this one actually explores the effects that looping has on Siffrin's mental state. They make so many mistakes, or have so many things go wrong that they couldn't possibly have foreseen, that lock them out of progression, and they end up having to loop again and again just to ensure that the world doesn't cheat their friends out of a happy ending. And you can tell from the start that Siffrin isn't in a good place already. That's not to say it's all doom and gloom. The game is actually fucking hilarious when it wants to be, and supremely emotional at all of the times, but the main focus is on Siffrin's journey through the unique form of isolation that he's been locked in, always alone, even when they're with their friends. And the longer you play the game, the more Siffrin starts to break down and lose himself, clinging to the feeble hope that this time they might break free. Maybe this will be the loop that ends their suffering. And the thing is, his friends notice this. They're not aware of the loops, but they know Siffrin very well, And as the people who love them the most in the whole world, they can absolutely tell that something is very wrong with him, and it changes how they interact with them, and fuck, this writing is really good. It's a little too good actually. Confession time, I haven't actually finished the game. I know I've mentioned this before, but I suffer from major clinical depression, and I started playing this game during a depressive episode that only got worse, which means I played the game near non-stop for a few days before I had to cut off all play completely for the sake of my own mental health. Watching other people suffer makes my depression worse, and I haven't picked it up since because I need to get videos done and I can't do it if I'm paralysed by the weight of my own mind. Geez, between this and Slay the Princess and Night in the Woods, I played a good few more melancholy games than usual. What was up with this year? I do absolutely plan on finishing the game, but until I do that, I just can't justify putting it any higher. So if there are any ESOT fans who are, I don't know, offended by the fact that I only ranked it in first, this is the reason. If my feelings on it change, then I'll officially change its position when I make another list next year, but until now, this is where it'll stay. And for a game I haven't actually finished, that should already say a lot. Oh yeah, and I also like the rock paper scissors dynamic of the combat. It's pretty unique to see that played out so literally. Plus, I really relate to how Odile responds to being woken up, because people also don't want to know what will happen if I have to get up to make them be quiet. Okay, considering I streamed this game and put it in a video about the catharsis of action games, it should surprise absolutely no one who's been paying the slightest bit of attention that this game is on my list. Hi-Fi Rush is just sheer joyful energy from the word go, and the single most fun game I've touched all fucking year. And considering it came to us from Tango Gameworks, you know, the studio set up by Shinji Mikami that brought us the Evil Within series, that distinction is all the more impressive. It's also the single most functional game Bethesda has released in a fucking decade, but that's a low bar to clear. In my aforementioned video, I described it as feeling like a music video fight scene that you get to choreograph yourself, and I honestly still stand by that. Hi-Fi Rush is a rhythm action platforming beat-em-up bonanza wherein literally everything in the world moves to the beat of the music, and attacking, dodging or parrying to that beat is the name of the game. Granted, you don't actually have to do most of the things exactly on beat, which is good because I fucking suck at rhythm games. Oh my god, I'm so shit at them. But aside from the parrying, you can actually get through the game without needing to hit the beat all that much, and the only thing that really suffers is your score, and the game scars your ability to hit the beat separately from the other aspects of the combat, and my rhythm score, much like a whale, rarely rose above sea level. But that honestly didn't bother me because this game is just so fucking fun that I really couldn't care less about my fucking score. From combat to traversal, everything in this game just feels good to pull off. And it also helps that the soundtrack is fucking amazing, one of the best I've ever heard in my life. I was honestly spoiled for video game OSTs this year because the number 1 and number 2 spots also have kick-ass soundtracks, and I literally cannot decide which of these 3 is my favourite. This game is just full of amazingly fun and badass moments, from making a robot punch itself in the face, to fighting a JoJo posing mad scientist in a virtual volcano while his budget visibly drains, to an actual one-on-one showdown with the love of my life, to stealing the show from the biggest bitch in corporate headquarters, to dodging around a giant mech whilst Whirring by the Joy Formidable plays in the background. Just god, there's too fucking much to love about this game. Please go play it, I cannot recommend it enough. You know, this was actually the first new game I played this year. Yeah, I bought it as a Christmas present to myself, and I'm really glad I did because it's managed to stick with me ever since. Sea of Stars follows the adventures of Zale and Valir, Solstice warriors who set out on a mission to travel to a cursed island and destroy a creature known as the Dweller of Woe, an abomination that can only be harmed by the powerful Solstice magic that they wield. Empowered by the sun and moon respectively, the two are joined by their childhood friend and warrior cook Garl, the single best character in the whole of the game, because despite not actually having any magic of his own, Garl wields the mightiest power of all: actual social skills and a charming personality. This game is honestly just a delight to play. Everything about it feels very refined and well executed, from a story that manages to be both fantastical and incredibly personal, to a combat system that's fun and surprisingly elegant, to characters that are all just a lovely flavour of weird and memorable. The game just doesn't miss, especially not with the soundtrack, which is so fucking fantastic, and you should go listen to it right the fuck now. I've been using it in a few videos this year and I'm really happy every time I do. It even has bardcore covers of a good 36 tracks on the OST that you can listen to in taverns in-game. It's really fucking good. Also, this is probably the only game I've played where the tavern side game, a role-based castle defense thing called Wheels, is something I actually wanted to play and it didn't just avoid it every opportunity because I'm not fucking here to play Magic the Gathering. I want to go on a kick-ass Magic adventure. Stop putting card games in every fucking RPG. I want to play the game I bought. Sorry, I'm done venting now. Sea of Stars was apparently inspired by Chrono Trigger, and from what I understand, fans of that game tend to like this one. But I never played Chrono Trigger. It was before my time, so I don't really have any nostalgia for it, and all of my love of this game comes directly from the merits of this game. And I do love this game, I fucking love it a lot. I was actually stuck on whether to put this or Hi-Fi Rush in the number 2 slot, because I adore them both for different reasons, but what eventually made that decision for me is that Sea of Stars is the other game I mentioned that I 100%ed, and not just to get to the true end of the game. There's a really fun Easter egg that you can only get once you've done a whole bunch of really specific things that you'll need a guide for, and normally I shirk that kind of mindless busy work when I can just find it on YouTube without dealing with the annoyance of esoteric bullshit. But I just liked this game so much that I was essentially just like, yeah sure, I'll hang out with you a little bit longer, why not? I've been considering doing an actual review of the game at some point, but I'm waiting for the DLC to come out this spring, which I am way too excited for, let me tell you. Sea of Stars is just a really fucking good game, and it's one that I've come back to replay multiple times this year. I don't know what else to say, you should give it a try, maybe you'll love it too. Okay, so before we get to the number 1 spot, let's do a quick rundown of the honourable mentions, games that stuck with me, but for whatever reason just didn't make it onto the list proper. The Missing, JJ Macfield and the Island of Memories, is a game I think I briefly talked about in my trans rep video this year, but I didn't actually get around to playing until mid-fall. It's all about the titular JJ going on a camping trip with her girlfriend Emily, who goes mysteriously missing, prompting JJ to look for her, get struck by lightning, and then get revived by a moose-headed surgeon, now with the ability to dismember her body in various horrifying ways before reassembling herself like nothing ever happened. I'll be honest, while I finished the game, puzzle platformers aren't really my thing, and I got more enjoyment out of the story told through the text message history that you unlock by collecting donuts. Yeah, this game is fucking weird. It was also just really hard for me to sit through JJ's repeated dismemberments and compound fractures and just, ew. This game can be a lot, and I just don't enjoy watching characters who don't deserve it suffer, especially trans girls. Stray Gods, the role-playing musical, is the story of Grace, a singer in her friend's band who gets thrust into a divine murder mystery plot when the muse Calliope, who she very briefly made friends with, shows up stabbed on her doorstep and transfers her eidolon into the hapless girl, making her the new muse and revealing that the Greek gods were real, are still around, and are also a dying breed for complicated reasons. I actually streamed this game after someone gifted it to me, and my verdict is that while I really liked the story and characters, I can honestly just take or leave the music. That's probably not a very good thing to say about a musical, is it? I was actually struggling to figure out what it was about the music that left me feeling so meh, but then I realised it's actually because of the game format that I didn't like it very much. I like musicals and I like Greek mythology, and I fucking adore character-based storytelling, but the songs are too inconsistent for my liking because they have to change depending on the choices you make, so the tone can end up rubber banding wildly and it just takes me out of the experience. If the game had just been a visual novel, I don't think it would have lost anything for me. That said, the cast is full of really talented singers. I didn't know Laura Bailey had such good pipes, but she can really perform. Speaking of visual novels, Cryptid Crush is probably my favourite I've played this year. It takes place in Longhope, a town with a 99.9% cryptid population, and that 0.1% is only because you moved in. You play Robin, the only human in town, whose best friend is a Mothman and whose cat is allegedly a protector spirit, and who accidentally hits a werewolf with their car, but he gets better and then you can date him, so it's all good. Cryptid Crush is brought to us by Drowsy Drake Studios and is currently a work in progress. You can download it for free on itch.io, but I'd really like to ask people to give them a little money. This game is totally worth it. The writing is solid and the art, which is done by Squidinu, is really very soft and lovely. I honestly find this game really charming and I'm waiting in quiet desperation for the next update to come out. I also really like that while the game lets you pick your pronouns, Robin is canonically non-binary. We almost never get to see non-binary people of colour in games, so this is really cool. They also have a really nice design. All of the characters are really well designed actually. I don't know what possessed them to make the ghost fluffy, but I love it, and it is the way of the future. Also, the voice acting is really good for what little they have. If this game was finished, I'd definitely put it in the top 10 proper, but for now the honourable mentions is where it'll have to wait. I'll link to the game's itch page and the artist Tumblr in the description, so please show them some support. Yeah, so I fucking love Elden Ring. I don't have any footage of my own gameplay because I play it on console, and so you'll have to take me at my word, but I've beaten the game 3 times since I bought it. Sadly, I first finished it last year, so the game itself cannot be on my top 10 list, but the DLC came out this year and it fucking slaps, so I'm putting it right here. I mean, it's my list and my video, so I could always say fuck it and throw it on the list proper, considering the DLC is the size of a whole fucking second game. But it would still be breaking the rules I set, and it would also feel dishonest, so here it stays. People will just have to settle for it topping everyone else's list. But yeah, the Shadow of the Erdtree is really fucking good, really hard too, and this is coming from someone who's finished the entire Souls series and Bloodborne and all their respective DLCs. I don't really have much else to say, other than the fact that I liked it, and I found it utterly hilarious that the best boss fight in the entire game is essentially just Moby Dick as a dragon, accompanied by his very own supernaturally pissed off Ahab. Hades 2 is a really good game and the direct sequel to Hades 1, but with Zagreus' sister Melinoe this time. I actually made my very first ever first impressions video on the game when it came out in early access, and I still really enjoy it now. I'm planning a full review of it when it's fully released, but for now it remains on the honourable mentions, even if I have spent way too much time playing this fucking game. Coral Crown still fucking slaps, by the way. Bloomtown, A Different Story, is Persona 5. I'm not going to bother dancing around the point here. This is just Persona 5 as a 2D pixel art indie game, and that's not the dismissal it probably sounds like, because I fucking love P5 and I don't make the comparison lightly. I'm completely serious, by the way. Emily is the new kid in town. She makes a deal with the devil for demon powers, gathers a small group of friends and a talking dog to fight manifestations of evil residing in the rotten adults in that small town that she and her brother are staying in. She collects demons and fuses them to make them stronger. You hang out with your friends to improve their battle abilities. It's all right there, just simplified by necessity. I actually really like this game. The writing is charming and the characters are well realised and likeable, and the combat system is wonderfully intricate. Combat functions like an actual Persona game as well, with each character's demons having their own elemental affinities and weaknesses, and a once mirror system and an all-out attack, and yeah, it's all very Persona-y. What sets combat apart is that it's very status heavy. Each element has its own status effect that can be applied, and each one has its own special debuff, as well as granting a one-time vulnerability to either an element or a weapon type, and it all works really fucking well. Once you get the hang of it, you feel genuinely clever and powerful, and it's honestly a lot of fun. Also, the game has a really good soundtrack. You know how Persona 5 has only like one combat song that played throughout the entire fucking game and was only switched out for special occasions? Well, Bloomtown has 6 battle songs, and it swaps them out randomly so you never hear the same one twice in a row, and therefore you won't slowly start to hate the song you originally loved. It's great. I've actually been using one of the songs from this game for the whole of the honourable mentions. It's called Stay With Me and it's my favourite. Now, given all of what I just said, you may be wondering why this game isn't on my top 10. And the reason for that is betrayal! See, Bloomtown commits what I consider to be a fucking cardinal sin of game design, and I cannot forgive it for doing me dirty like that. You know how I mentioned the really fun and intricate combat system? Well, Bloomtown commits this cheeky little crime where bosses are entirely immune to status effects. But they can still inflict them upon you, and they can take multiple turns at once, and they get multi-target spells way before you do. So this turns what should be a super fun test of your familiarity with the game mechanics into a fucking slugfest, as you just throw as many offensive spells as you can in the hopes of whittling the boss's health down before it can debilitate your entire party, and oh fuck, I am not having fun with this. I do still think that there's enough good here to recommend the game, but if you are considering buying it, do yourself a fucking favor and take my advice. Get the strongest guns ASAP. You'll need to buy them, and I don't care what it fucking takes to get the money. You fucking get the money. Mortgage your house, steal from your grandpa, sell a fucking kidney, do whatever the fuck it takes. Buy the biggest guns you can get your hands on, and then rock up to every boss fight dressed for a Texan wedding, before giving the bastard a good old-fashioned American Deep South high-fiver to the fucking eye socket. Also, make sure you get all of the side quests done before you face the mayor. The game doesn't actually impose a deadline for saving people, but you only have a limited number of days after you beat the mayor until you reach a point of no return, so get it all done. Alright, that should be all of them. Let's wrap this up with my number 1 best game I played in 2024. I feel like this requires some explanation, considering the games I put much lower on the list. Is Wondersong the best designed game on the list? No. Is it the best looking game on the list? No. Is it objectively better than the games in spots 2 through 5? Also no. But it is the game that kept me going this year, and I can't think of anything with more impact than that. Wondersong is the story of the Bard, who I believe is canonically named Kiwi, but who I named Leoa, and their quest to save the world. The universe is ending, not because of some ultimate evil, but because it's old and falling apart. And the creator goddess, Ea, has a policy where, at the end of all things, when the natural order starts to fall apart and the universe starts to unravel, she allows the world to fade away before she sings a new one into existence. But the Bard doesn't like the idea of everyone and everything just ending, so they set out on a journey to discover the 8 pieces of the Earth Song, which they're told by an angel of Ea can be used to save everyone. The thing is though, Leoa isn't the hero. Ea has already chosen a hero whose job it is to ensure the world really does end, and Audrey is way stronger than they are and is also being aided by destiny, so it's a real struggle. But Leoa refuses to give up. They have hope, they have their song, and they have their friend Miriam, and they're going to fight to the bitter end to save everyone, no matter what. I actually found Wondersong when I was doing research for my non-binary representation video early this year. I was in a really dark place after being abandoned by my friends for really transphobic reasons, and I was struggling to even write the script for the video. But playing this game, it really helped me get through it. I think I saw myself in the Bard, in their fight to keep hope alive and their struggle with feeling insignificant, and it actually gave me the strength I needed to keep going. This game may have even saved my life. I think it helps that this game is entirely earnest in its presentation, without an ounce of cynicism. That's not to say that it isn't funny or doesn't have cynical characters. Miriam is actually one of the biggest cynics in gaming, but it never diminishes the message of the game in any way. It doesn't make light of the feelings or struggles of the characters. It doesn't stop in the middle of an emotional scene to wink to camera. It presents everything with a straightforward honesty that I really wish more writers would use. I feel like far too many writers are self-conscious of their writing and think people are going to laugh at their emotional moments, so they diminish said moments preemptively, and it honestly weakens their writing as a whole. Yes, the game says, you will struggle, you will stumble and cry and suffer, and the world may seem too cruel to continue in, but you're not alone. You have hope, you have life, you have a future, if only you'll keep going a little longer. Won't you please keep going just a little bit longer? The game was developed by A Shell in the Pit, and I honestly think this is some of their very best work. And while I am completely biased on that, this is also the game that made me say, out loud, wow, I have seriously underestimated the emotional power of the accordion. And yes, I really do talk like that sometimes in real life. Wondersong is my comfort game. It's the game I come back to when I'm feeling hopeless. It's got music I listen to when I'm struggling to fall asleep. It means the world to me, partially because it's what kept me in this world. It's a work of love that I can't help but think about from time to time, and it's the best game I played this year. I'm sorry if you're hoping for another game to take the top slot, but this is where Wondersong belongs. I'll be less emotional about it next year, I promise. Oh yeah, I mentioned earlier that Eichenfell had a reference to this game. One of the playable characters is Ima, the painting witch, and Z are actually a reference to this person right here in Wondersong. It's something that I haven't seen anyone else mention, and I only realised it when I was replaying Wondersong a couple months ago. It's a pretty cool detail. Okay, yeah, now that's everything. Friends, thank you so much for watching, and thank you for sticking with me this year. And what a year it's been, yeah? I can't imagine I'm the only one feeling completely fucking exhausted as 2025 approaches. God, I'm so fucking tired. I hope that, if nothing else, I've provided you with at least one game from this list that will bring you some small measure of joy as we continue into the future, and I hope that you have a lovely new year, wherever you are. I've got some big plans for the coming year, as well as a lot of videos I'm really excited to make. I hope your time spent on my channel has been worth it, and I hope you'll continue to enjoy my content if so. Take care of yourselves guys, and hold on to hope. We're in this together. See you next year.